Welcome to the Humanergy Leadership Podcast. My name is David Wheatley. We're here to talk leadership in small, bite-sized and practical chunks. Enjoy.
Hi, my name is Mitrius, and I am the Business and Marketing Director at Humanergy. And I have the honor of hosting this very special episode of the Humanergy Leadership Podcast. It's special because this is our 200th episode, and our special guest today is David Wheatley, your regular host. David is Humanergy's Chief Question Asker. David, welcome to your own podcast.
Oh, thank you. The tables are turned.
So to celebrate this 200th episode, congratulations, by the way, it's quite a feat. The point of this episode is to ask our chief question asker questions himself. So here we go. David, what inspired you to start a leadership development podcast, and how did you envision it benefiting the listeners?
Thanks, Mimi. I appreciate you doing this as much as I don't like being on the question answering side of things. I've been listening to podcasts since about 2006. I worked it out so I was an early adopter and always thought that it would be something of value that if we could get our act together, that we could offer something extra to Humanergy clients. And so in March 2020, I don't know about everybody else, but I suddenly found myself with a little bit of extra time on my hands and was sat there. It seemed like it was serendipitous to start talking to myself. So that's how it started, and I just had a picture of, I think this is going to be complementary to our coaching and training work, and maybe we can provide some resources that are of value to people.
Yeah. Well, I knew that I found it super valuable personally. I'm curious, do you have...
You're my listener.
There's more than one. Do you have a podcast that you started listening to back in 2006?
Oh, there's a bunch. I tend to have three themes on my podcast list. There's some leadership ones, leadership business kind of slash. There's proper football, and then there's British
Soccer,
comedy.
for those of you who don't know.
Yeah, and there's a lot of British comedy ones, and so I started listening to some, like The Bugle, for example, is a British comedy podcast, which a guy called Andy Zaltzman and somebody that Americans now know, John Oliver. Before he was the John Oliver that everybody knows, he was on that podcast in about 2006, 2007.
I did not know that. I watched John Oliver.
There you go. Got a back catalogue of podcasts to listen to if you like them.
Definitely. So in the experience that you've had over these 200 episodes, what are some of the most important lessons that you've learned?
Well, I think it's been, apart from the learning how to podcast, which was the first thing, to learn how to do that, there's been some interesting episodes, and I tend to track these by how often I share them with coaches, people in training with Humanergy. I go back to, I think it was episode 18 when I spoke to Margie Haganey about asking better questions, and some of the work of Edgar Schein in an inquiry, and some people have heard me say in my work that when you ask a question, you should count to 10 seconds after that question, and that originated in that episode. So that's been value to spread. Episode 23 was a conversation with a Humanergy client, Scott McFarland, on a credit union, because it was the idea of the transition from quarterback to coach. And anytime somebody gets promoted in a leadership role, it feels like you're going from quarterback, you're in the middle of the play, everything goes through you, to being coach, where you're not even allowed on the field. And Scott was an American football player in college, so he was somebody I could talk to and understand what that transition really looked like. The episode 48 is one of the most popular ones. It's a story about me learning in a dramatic way. 121 was another conversation with some CEOs about when's my voice helpful versus loud. These were all ones that I got real value myself out of. And even 156, which was preparing to leave well. and started to explore the idea of preparing for our leadership transition the day we get that job, so that we're thinking about handing it over. So there's just some episodes that really stand out, but most of them, my measure has been, if I've found some value out of it, then maybe somebody else will. Maybe my listener will.
Yeah, I can tell you that I have shared preparing to leave episode 156 with a friend of mine who was transferring positions from out of one to another. So and it's not just me.
There you go. That's 2 listeners.
So how do you choose your topics and your guests for the episodes? Are there certain qualities you look for?
For the regular listener, you'll recognize that there's really 3 types of episode we have at Humanergy, and that's going to change a little bit in 2025. But there's been a series of short, kind of no more than 5-minute episodes that are focused on specific Humanergy tools, and that complements the work we do in our high impact leadership training and some of the coaching we do. There's been some longer conversations with what I call some leadership sages. This includes some old friend of mine, Judy Brown, who I've spoken to quite a bit, and Rick Eigenbrod, who have both been doing this for much longer than me, and were having great conversations and asked me to join them and record them. So that was been powerful, and that also includes the longer conversations. Also include the 2024 series on family business, and so once a month-ish, I've been talking to a family business about some of the best practices there, which have been powerful. And then the third section is people really hawking a book. And about once a week, I get a request from somebody saying, I think I'd be great for your podcast. And most of them have obviously not heard it. And it's just a sales pitch. And I know there's organizations that go out there and guarantee they'll get you on 10 podcasts. The ones that I respond to are the ones that I'm specifically interested in. And it becomes one of those questions, oh, if I'm interested in learning more about that, again, somebody else on the other end of Humanergy might be interested in listening about that. And so it's just tapping into some smart people that have got, there's some reason they want to get themselves out there, but it's value conversations at the same time.
Yeah. You had mentioned that things are going to change a little bit in 2025. I know I'm kind of throwing you a curveball here, but should we let our listeners in on some of the changes they might expect to see for 2025?
Well, you know as much about this as I do because you're the one that's driving the changes. So, yeah, so the end of this year, episode 200, and we'll maybe do a couple more as we fade out in 2024. And then we're going to regroup around March of 2025. March is our 25th anniversary as Humanergy, so we're going to try and do some things a bit different. And so far, we've had 200 episodes in season 1. And so what we'll probably find is that seasons 2, 3, 4 are shorter, and we're trying to make them more focused. What I've understood about this process is that there's not that many people that are waiting every week to listen, but there's people who go back and listen. So it's got a slow uptick of people picking them up. And when you think there's episodes that we put out in 2020, sorry, that we still refer to now and I still have a growing leadership. So that's the beauty of a podcast, is if it's done right, it doesn't age that much. There's still value even if you go back and look at the back catalog. So it'd be interesting. We're going to do some new things in 2025, have a bit more of a focus around things. Some of the same kinds of conversations will happen. And apparently I've got to do a new intro as well.
You recorded the intro yourself the first time, right?
Well, no, the first few episodes have a piece of music that I was kindly lent by some friends of mine who are in a band in LA called Finkel. And I just asked them for a piece of music that might sound good. So you listen to about the first 40, I think that's theirs. And then as I redid some things, there was a time actually when Corey Fernandez, who's another regular on the podcast and my other host, if you like, just sat me down and said, so what do you want to get out of this? And as I was thinking about the value to the client, I also decided to redo the intro and say some different things over the top of it. So yes, I'm afraid up until now, the guitar playing on the intro and the stings has been me.
I think it's great.
Overall, I mean, everything has been so far for the last kind of 5 years nearly. And as we go into 2025 and beyond, it's just how can I focus on adding value to Humanergy clients, people who are connected to the Humanergy verse, if you like, and share with them things that we think are going to be thought-provoking.
Yeah. So 200 episodes is a lot, and you haven't given up. And so I guess my question is, how or where do you find your stamina and consistency for continuing on?
That's a good question. The most podcasts don't get past episode 7, apparently. And yet there's millions of podcasts out there to pick from. And this was just a project of passion, if you like, that once started, I could get into a rhythm of doing. I heard somebody say, you have to start somewhere and you have to realize that your first one will be crap. And you have to do the first one to get to the 50th. And that was my mantra, was I just have to get through the first few to get to the 50th. And if you go back to the beginning, you'll find that episodes 1 through about 7 are no longer available. I actually took them down because I was still learning how to podcast. But then you can pick it up. You might still think, you listen to episodes 8, 9, 10, I didn't know what I was doing. But it's been getting better. That the discipline's just been scheduling. I've found the conversations value and important, whether it's been refining our tools or talking to other people. So, if it's important and value, I'll put it on the schedule. And that's just been part of my schedule for 5 years. So, and as I look forward, I'm starting to get some of my colleagues, include Corey being the main one, but I'm going to be trying to distribute that in 2025 and beyond to some of the rest of the Humanergy team to share some insights as well.
Great. We look forward to hearing from other voices. Not that we are sad to hear yours on a regular basis. It's a lovely British accent, refreshing. So how do you think that the medium of podcasting complements the broader work in leadership development, and what impact do you see it having on the business?
It's another useful way to get tools out there. I find I listen to podcasts when I'm walking the dog, when I'm sat in waiting rooms. It's a space I can just fill that space with something that's useful or thought-provoking. And although it's not everybody's medium, it's, in my mind, kind of like curating your own radio station. And so I've done that. I listen to my radio station and it's made up of my podcasts. And I think more people are getting the hang of that and finding access to it. And we're just one of the millions. But if you're familiar with Humanergy, you might find there's some useful, interesting stuff in amongst that. At least my other listener, Mimi, thinks so.
Well, that was great, David. Is there anything else that you want to tell our listeners about your experience over these 200 episodes or your 25 years of service and leadership development?
Making me feel old there. Thank you, Mimi. I appreciate that. No, I'd love feedback. If folks have particular episodes that are favorites, then I'd love to hear that, because as we rebuild for 2025, it's interesting to see where people are listening and where they're finding value on top of what I find value in. And if there's a particular arena or something about Humanergy that you want to hear more about, then let us know and we can plug that in. We'll still continue to record our First Friday sessions. For those that haven't found the First Friday yet, you can go to humanergy.com and see the drop down for First Friday. First Friday of every month, we do an hour-long Zoom, and there's about a 15-minute segment in that we pop onto the podcast as an audio version. And then, there's also, thanks Mimi for all the video editing, there's video versions of all of these things too, if you want snippets from our YouTube site. So check all these places out. If you're saying, hey, I wish there was one on a certain subject, that probably is. And if you're stuck, let me know and I'll tell you where it is and what episode to go find. but most of it's searchable in whatever device you want to search it in. It will help you out. And I'm looking forward to 2025. We may even have a searchable form on our new website if we get round to that, our director of marketing, which will allow you to find those resources a little bit easier. And part of that will be tapping into the podcast.
Great. Yeah, and I just wanted to kind of elaborate on what David said. If any of our listeners have topics they wish that we covered, shoot us an email, info@humanergy.com. That's HUMANERGY.com. And same goes for First Friday. There's a topic you want to join us in on for First Friday. If you're having a specific issue with a coworker, let us know about it. Shoot us that email, info@humanergy.com. Follow us on LinkedIn. Check us out on Twitter. We're around, but LinkedIn's probably the place that you're going to get the most value from us. And David, thank you for humoring me and doing this 200th podcast episode. I really appreciate all you do here. And thanks for leading the charge.
Well, I appreciate all you do too, Mimi, and maybe you'll be hosting a few more episodes in 2025.
We shall see. All right. Thanks so much, David.
Thank you.
That was the Humanergy Leadership Podcast. My name's David Wheatley. For further information about Humanergy, go to humanergy.com or check out our latest book, What Great Teams Do Great, from all good bookstores. Have a good one. Stay healthy.